Hello, everyone. This is Ezekiel Trezevant, Las Vegas Raiders on SI, co-beat writer here as your host today. Happy game day to you. Let's get right to it, guys. I hope everybody liked what they saw week one, Raiders versus Patriots. I think it's hard not to like what you saw. I think the most exciting part, just right off the top about the Patriots and Raiders matchup last week, was the fact that everything that we have really been telling you guys in terms of what we've seen from the Raiders in practice, in training camp, a lot of those things came to fruition against the Patriots. Really starting with the offense, I think that's the most noticeable one. Obviously, it's an offensive driven league, and obviously the Raiders went all out really this offseason to revamp the offense in a lot of different ways, mainly at the skill positions. And then obviously at quarterback with Geno, trading that third round pick for Geno. That's in week one, you've already seen it pay off, right? And it's only getting started. There's 16 more games that these guys will be playing, and Geno's going to be obviously a large part of the plan and a huge determining factor for the Raiders going forward, which is par for the course for every quarterback in the National Football League. But again, back to the Patriots game. I mean, you have to like what you saw from the Raiders offense. In terms of the Raiders offense, they had, I believe, 10 plays of 20 yards or more. They had another play worth 19 yards, and that's just something you didn't see last season, and really the last two seasons from the Raiders offense. And week one, in terms of Chip Kelly being your offensive coordinator, you're already seeing that pay off. They made Chip Kelly the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league for a reason, and you're seeing that pay off immediately. So, a lot of reason to be excited. To be more specific about the Chip Kelly, let's dive a little bit more into that, if you don't mind. I would say first things you have to notice was the first half and second half differences against the Patriots, and I think the reason you have to notice that is because it's always going to come back up. You're going to see this a lot more as you go down the road with the Raiders week by week. Obviously, starting today with the Chargers, you're going to see them make adjustments. You're going to see them kind of try to feel their opponent out a little bit more because now they have the ability to do that, right? And once they figure out the opponent, once Chip figures out what the defense is trying to do, then I think it's lights out. Now the Raiders are going to lose some games, right? They're not going to go undefeated. It's not all roses, if you will. But at the same time, when you compare to where the Raiders offense specifically was really the last couple of seasons, I mean, it was tough to watch them the last couple of seasons. I think if we're being honest, it was tough to watch them. There's a reason why I believe they started, I want to say five different quarterbacks over that time. And they've had three to four different offensive coordinators, if you include, again, Bo Hardegree as the interim offensive coordinator. So there's a reason for that. And what the Raiders really did this offseason, what they really attacked each of the reasons that they struggled offensively, right? Hey, they didn't have a lot of skill position players before the draft and before free agency, et cetera. They went and they took care of that position group. They took care of quarterback. They took care of running back, and obviously the offensive line. That they're returning pretty much everybody from last season. So you see where the Raiders paid their attention to this offseason in terms of adding to the roster. That's all the real proof in the pudding that you need. And then obviously you have to consider Chip as a part of those additions as well. It really doesn't matter how much talent you have if the right play calls are not being called. It does not matter. And honestly, as much as the roster has been a problem for the Raiders over the past couple of seasons, so has some of the coaching, whether you look at head coaching or coordinators wise, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So exciting in terms of what I saw from Chip Kelly. I think more specifically the fact that once he figured out what the Patriots are trying to do when they were bringing pressure, when they were biting hard on the runs. And you got to keep in mind the Raiders really weren't even running the ball that well. I believe Genty had 38 yards, if I'm not mistaken. I think the Raiders had about 50 to 60 total yards of rushing, and the Patriots are still selling out on just the threat of the run. So that tells you two things in terms of progression. It shows you, hey, the Raiders have upgraded at quarterback and running back, right? If the defense is selling out that hard just to stop the run, and the Raiders they didn't even run the ball that well on the back end, they also had the quarterback that can take advantage of the defense being so aggressive. So every way you look at the offense, you have reason to be excited. You have the quarterback in Geno that can take advantage of what the defense was doing. You have a running game that, although it did not get started really all that well against the Patriots, it's there. Right over the last two seasons, I don't think they could have ran much play action successfully. Definitely not as much as they ran against the Patriots. It wouldn't have been as successful because the running game was not nearly as much of a threat. And the other half of that is what happens when the Raiders actually start to get that running game going, which they will at some point this season. So if you can get that much of a bite on your play action and you don't even run the ball well, you didn't even run the ball well like the Raiders didn't against the Patriots. you have to be excited about what happens when they finally do run the ball well. That play action should be there even more. So, with that said, I think what I'm looking forward to the most in terms of Raiders Chargers is the next level for Chip Kelly and the next level for his play calling because it's there. I'm just curious to see what that is going to be. How deep in his bag can he go? Now, against the Patriots, it was, hey, they're being aggressive. Let's use play action. But it's Chip Kelly. He has so many different other ways to attack defenses. I would be surprised if he doesn't roll some of those out against the Chargers and vice versa. I think the Chargers are going to run some things that are a little bit differently, a little bit better than what the Patriots ran. So the Raiders offense will be tested. Chip Kelly will be tested in a way that they weren't necessarily tested, against the Patriots in addition to the ways that they were tested and possibly struggled with, if you will, in the first half against the Patriots. So I think the Chargers are going to bring it a lot of different ways, things that the Raiders expect, things that they don't expect. That's what you expect from a divisional rival. That hey, you got to expect the unexpected because they're trying to beat you. And guess what? You're going to see these guys again down the road. So you're always taking everything into consideration. So it will be interesting to see just how what those adjustments are that Chip Kelly brings against the Chargers because he's going to bring it. So watching that chess match, and I think what's going to be even more interesting is not just the chess match, but just how quickly that chess match starts. I have a gut feeling it's going to start from the very first play, and obviously it probably doesn't every week, but I think it's even more so this week. Jim Harbaugh Chargers, a game that you don't necessarily have to win, but you definitely want to win. Which brings us to our next point. First home game of the season in terms of regular season under Pete Carroll. It's his birthday as well. So a lot of different, things that play a part into how big of a game this is going to be for the Raiders, right? Pete Carroll's birthday division game, a team that swept the Raiders twice, or excuse me, swept them last year, beat them twice last year. And I pretty sure neither one of those games are all that close from what I can really remember. And that's where Pete Carroll comes in. That's where the drive to be competitive comes in to play for the Raiders. And I think it did against the Patriots as well, right? When things didn't go well, those guys are just still competing. At a certain point, I don't think it really it wasn't really about winning or losing to those guys. It was about competing to the best of their abilities and then letting the results fall where they may. This week, in terms of the Chargers, this game today, I think is going to be that times 10, right? You got all the bright lights, the entire country's watching. It's a team that you're very familiar with now, different Raiders team than what the Chargers have seen. But in terms of what the Chargers have, it's pretty much the same or very similar to what it was last season under Harbaugh. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Raiders take care of that. Now, we talked about Chip Kelly. It's time to talk about Patrick Graham and that defense. It's an offensive league, so a lot of attention goes to the offense, especially when they perform well. Those are the guys that are lighting up the scoreboard, so it made sense. Gino threw for 362, I believe. He played well. I will say this after week one, he's completely turned the Raiders offense around. Obviously, now you got to go prove it for weeks after weeks, but I think we can generally say that the offense is significantly better with Gino, even after 1 week. Now, other side of the ball, Patrick Graham and what he did and what the defense did on Sunday against the Patriots. I mean, you have to tip your hat to them simply because they were in a somewhat similar situation as what they faced a lot of times last season, but they responded differently. They responded better, and I'll dive into that a little bit more. But specifically, the offense turned the ball over, right? And not only did the offense turn the ball over, it was one play. We get it. They moved on. They won, but they were on the road or they're on track to just completely stealing momentum when the turnover happened. Not only did they not get the momentum, but momentum kind of went the other way. After the Raiders threw that pick, I think they had three and outs on offense right after that interception. And the Raiders defense just stood. They stood tall and they held out. And I think that was the thing that was the most impressive last season when the turnover would happen. I mean, we saw it. It seemed like things would kind of go downhill after that one turnover. That's not what happened on Sunday. That one turnover happened, and it was truly like the Raiders defense took it upon themselves to kind of support their guys. And they did that in impressive fashion. Pretty sure it was only 3 points from the second quarter all the way through pretty much the entire fourth quarter. Patriots had a field goal, I want to say, about 3 minutes left in the game. But at that point, I mean, the damage had been done, right? The Raiders defense held them to 3 points for 2.5 quarters, almost 3 quarters. It's hard for any team to win a game if that's the situation. So hats off to Patrick Graham, hats off to the Raiders defense, and that's what they need. I I think the reason why they played so well on Sunday was because they're good, right? Especially when they play to how they can play. But I think that they had that confidence in the offense that eventually the offense was going to figure things out. And I don't think that confidence was there last year. In baseball, it's like run support, right? You need to know that if we play defense well, our offense is going to eventually figure it out and give us some points so we don't have to be perfect as a defense. And I think once the Raiders defense knew, and I think they knew early on that, hey, our offense can score, our offense can do it, they can do it this time. I think that just played into how the defense played. I think that just fed into their confidence of, hey, not only are we successful on the field, we're getting, they had a turnover, they're getting pressure on the quarterback, but our offense is going to figure it out. We just have to do our job for long enough. And that's literally what they did right up until just a few minutes left to go in the game. Patriots scored, that field goal, but the game was over. In my opinion, I don't want to say it's over, but it was pretty much over. We've seen some crazy things in the NFL. I get it, but the way the Raiders are playing that game, the defense had played so well that by that point, I just couldn't see them giving up two scoring drives back to back after not doing so for two and a half, 3 quarters. I just couldn't see that happening. So in my book, it might have been a 7 point win, but that was basically a 2 possession game that they won in very impressive fashion. So you got to give them that. Dive a little bit deeper in terms of Patrick Graham. I love the way he dialed it up in terms of, especially on the defensive line, threw Max Crosby all over the field, threw Max in the middle on the outside where he normally plays. Same with Tyree. Same with the whole defensive line. He just started mixing it up. And, I think that throws any defense off, right? Or excuse me, any offense off. They were not expecting to see, Max Crosby lining up over the center, right? Or over the A gaps, whatever, wherever he wanted to be. Max, he was there and he was impacting the game. And it wasn't just Max, it was all the defensive line. But that's a testament to Patrick Graham and how much he believes in that defensive line, in their versatility, that he can line those guys up. And that directly impacts the game. Now, not only does it directly impact the game, but it's also Patrick Graham knowing his defense intimately and playing to their strengths. A lot of people have, downplayed the Raiders' defensive backs. That's been the biggest question mark entering the season for the defense. Was their defensive backfield? Well, if your defensive line is getting the type of pressure that they got on Sunday, it makes a lot of things easier for the defensive backfield. And I think what you saw last Sunday against the Patriots, that's the blueprint, right? That's what they want to do going forward. It's not going to be very difficult what the Raiders want to do. They want to pressure you. They're going to use that versatile defensive line to put the pressure on you, get the quarterback off his spot, make him maybe rush some throws, right? You don't necessarily have to always intercept the ball, right? Sometimes you can get a bad throw. He can go into, he can throw it out of bounds, whatever it may be, just disrupt the quarterback. And I think that's one thing Patrick Graham's defense in general, but specifically this defense is doing, and they're going to continue to do. And the beauty about disrupting the quarterback, it's not always about sacks. A lot of times, again, it's just disrupt the quarterback, and you don't have to be Max Crosby to disrupt the quarterback, right? Anybody can do that. And they have a lot of guys on that defensive line that can do that, whether you know their names or not. A lot of talent on that line, and they can all play well and play well together. So another interesting thing to just watch is watch the different stunts that Patrick Graham is running for the defensive line, not just who lines up where, but the different stunts that he's running. I would say I firmly believe Patrick Graham has fun, genuinely has fun mixing up the calls and the stunts on the defensive line. He looks like a kid in a candy store, just just dialing them up. So it's fun to watch that game. Also, the Raiders linebackers, Jermaine Pratt, Devin White, those guys stepped up well. Tommy Eichenberg stepped up well when he landed, went down relatively early with the elbow injury. So, I'm really impressed with that linebacker group as well. Now, Pete has repeatedly said that he has confidence in that linebacker group. And I think against the Patriots, you saw why. Now, in terms of the Chargers, what the Raiders have to do is more of what we saw against the Patriots. You have to pick what you're going to do, right? You have to stop one of the two, either the pass or the run. Obviously, you're playing against Justin Herbert, so you probably want to try to stop the run so they're not running and passing on you. Justin Herbert passing on you, there's no shame in that. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Some would say top in the league. I can see it going either way, but he's definitely one of the best. We can all agree on that. Raiders have to stop the run on defense, and they have to put the pressure on them. I think defensively against the Chargers, what you saw against the Patriots is basically what you're going to see against the Chargers again. Dialing up the pressure. If you can get there with four, get there with four. If not, maybe dial it up a little bit more, which you kind of saw the Raiders do defensively last week. They started to kind of crank it up more in various ways. I think they're going to do that against the Chargers. It's just a matter of when does that start, right? Just like Chip Kelly is figuring out the opponent's defense, Patrick Graham is doing that as well with the opponent's offense. And obviously, you don't want to go in there, throwing the kitchen sink at them first half. So you have to kind of approach things in a safe and a cautious way, and then adjust from there. Then obviously adjust from the to the adjustments. So exciting to see what both the Raiders offense and what the Raiders defense does against the Chargers. But it's going to be a close game. I think either way, you're looking at it probably about, I mean, less than 7 points, I would imagine, game between both of these teams. They know each other well in terms of specifically coaching style. And I think what the interesting aspect is going to be is how they actually execute those plans, especially on the Raiders side of things with so many new parts. Another thing I would like to quickly talk about is just the overall vibe of the Raiders. It's week one. We're still kind of figuring things out. Don't get me wrong, but there's a sense of optimism that I don't think is going to be stopped whether or not they win or lose against the Chargers, right? Because even if they lose, it's 1-1. You still got time to recover. But it's a sense of optimism of, hey, maybe this time is a little bit different. And I think a win against the Chargers would go a long way in confirming that this time is indeed different. It's a long season. Things can change, injuries happen, things come up that nobody can imagine over the 17 games NFL season. We see it every season. But after week one and heading into week two, I think there's reason to be legitimately excited for the Raiders. On top of just winning the game, the fact that a lot of the things that they have been working on in practice, in training camp for the last few months are translating to the game, or it translated, right? We only have one game of a sample size, so translated to that game. Week two today against the Chargers gives them a chance for it to translate again. And I think if it continues to translate and it gets to another win at 2-0, I mean, at that point, the Raiders are kind of playing with house money. I mean, Vegas reference, don't get me wrong, but at that point, I think they're playing with house money. You won 4 games last season. If you can get to 2-0, you're already halfway there. You're literally playing with house money, and that gives you some freedom. That gives you some room for error moving forward. So a lot to be excited about. If you ask me who's going to win, I've been on this one for really the whole offseason. I've had this one marked as a W, as a win, and nothing that happened against the Patriots is going to make me change that. So I would say, what the Raiders expect the unexpected. These guys they're prepared, they're ready, and they're ready to change the narrative. I think they're tired of the things that get said about them. I think they're tired of it, and they're ready to prove that this time is different. So with that said, guys, I'm going to sign off. I hope you guys enjoy watching the game today. I'm thoroughly excited. I'm trying to hold back my excitement for the game, but these guys have been working hard, man. They've been working hard, genuinely working hard. It doesn't always translate to wins. It doesn't always. And for right now, going into week two, these guys are 1-0, and that's all you can be. Every game day is 1-0 that game day. Against the Chargers, they have to bring it. It's going to be a tough game, but I got the silver and black winning. Thank you guys once again for joining me. Ezekiel Trezevant, Las Vegas Raiders on SI. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.